this asshole thing's working for me. It's very interesting. And I've seen
people tend not to come to me, call me an asshole, and then want to give me jobs and money. So I don't know what the hell you're doing.
And I say to people, it's sort of funny, but if I'm the leader of the asshole nation, I say to all of you assholes out there is light at the end of the sphincter.
We know of new methods of attack.
Such expansion teams don't make any money.
Well, it's because they don't have the history of. If you go to Boston, every game is sold out.
And I went to a game last week.
Yeah,
I bought tickets 10 minutes before in the app because people are about to lose all their money.
Sure.
But I still paid $270 a ticket or something.
Boston
like that.
is a hockey town.
It's a hockey town, yeah.
Detroit, Montreal, Toronto. Toronto Maple Leafs are the most profitable team. They make more money than all of them together.
The Leafs do?
Yeah. It's incredible.
This is an interesting economic. So I was especially interested in talking to you because you've been instrumental in teaching my daughter about economics because she loves the show.
Well,
absolutely loves it. And I remember having this conversation with her recently, and we were talking about when people say athletes are overpaid. I said, they're not overpaid.
No.
I mean, everyone says this,
they're
right?
very short-lived, actually.
They're short-lived, but no one in these organizations are going to pay a penny more than they have to. And you have to think, and they're talking to a 12-year-old about this,
right.
You have to think down the line, the jerseys that are sold in China, all the merchandising, people coming in and buying stuff.
Right.
And that's
why the
asses
Leafs
in
are
the
so
seats.
successful.
Yeah.
Their merch business is billions of dollars over the last decade. And they also have the risk, they don't win any games, but they sell out because they've got such a great corporate program.
Yeah.
The lounges in that facility are spectacular restaurants. So, you go and you pay $2,000 for a mid-season game, but you're getting, world-class restaurant, bar.
I just did the rafters at TD Garden.
Yeah.
The Garden, I don't call it TD Garden, whiwhich are amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you're watching above, and I don't love watching a hockey game that way. I like 20 rows up center.
Yeah, I prefer to center up 10, 15 rows. I agree with you. Just over the glass. So
over the glass. Yeah,
and then that's good.
Yeah, I said my daughter wanted to be
Otherwise,
front.
you can't see the plays develop if you're one end or the other. You don't really see the plays develop. That's what's interesting.
You grew up in Ontario?
No, I grew up in Montreal till I was about 7. Then we started traveling. But, I still have a good connection with Canada. But, Canada has fallen some pretty hard times, mostly out of what happened the last decade. They have negative GDP. Yeah, Trudeau was an idiot, unfortunately.
Absolutely an idiot.
Quite a moron. And so that's been a big problem.
Well, I mean, I was upset that we were about to have a great conservative prime minister, and watching that.
Well, I think he made a strategic mistake. If you recall, he could have gone down to see Trump before the inauguration, as Daniel Smith did. You should save this for the tape.
Are we rolling or not? Are we rolling? Yeah, just roll right into it.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. So let me give you a little history lesson on that election, because I'm a policy guy and I'm also an investor. And
who also almost, became the head of the Conservative Party at one point.
That was 2016. I learned a lot about politics, and but in the case of what just happened in Canada, you think of the last decade during the time of the Idiot King, because in the first 4 years he had a majority mandate, and he put in place some policies that nobody saw would be as devastating as they were, notably a bill called C-69, which didn't allow any development without him almost personally deciding whether they do it or not. Yeah. So no pipelines, no energy projects, no infrastructure projects. And so nothing really was noticeable on GDP for the first 36 months. But then all of a sudden, sovereign wealth, which generally allocated based on GDP, 2.5%, 3% to Canada each cycle. So if you're running a $500 billion fund out of Norway or UAE or France or wherever you are, you would always just allocate into the Canadian economy, index 3%. On the fourth year is when they started to pull back, saying, hey, everything we invest in never closes. We never get the permits. and we're spending a lot of money churning our wheels, like trying to build pipelines for you and all this, and they never close. And we spent millions of dollars on engineering fees. And so they quietly shut down. And over the next, period, this was the first 3 and 4 years, and then the 5th year, GDP growth went flat. And then it got worse. The Canadian pension plans stopped investing in their own country. Last year, even, only 8% of all Canadian pension money went to Canada. The country is an unmitigated disaster. And the idiot king had no idea what he was doing. He had no executional skills. I'm sure he's not a bad person, but he has no skills whatsoever. But wait, it gets worse. It's like they say in the infomercials. He puts Freeland, a journalist, as finance minister of Canada, which, of course, an idiot king would do that. He wouldn't know any better. And that's when things really got bad. She flew to Egypt, pissed off the Egyptians. They shut down visas to Canada. Went to India, pissed them off. Pissed off the Chinese, pissed off the Germans. She could never read the room. She was acting...
My one interaction with her, she pissed me off.
Yeah, well, she just, that's all she knows how to do. So together, idiot king, idiot queen, decimated the country. And now Carney, the actual election, Pierre Poilievre, I know both these guys, he missed an open net. Good analogy for you in hockey. He was up 31%, unprecedented.
How did he blow it? I mean, the attribution is usually to Trump, right?
Well, it's very specific because I happened to be in the room when that occurred. So what happened was, people think that Trudeau didn't like, or Trump didn't like Trudeau. It's actually he didn't like Freeland. He really disdained her, and the two of them came down in the inauguration to Mar-a-Lago, and that's when Trump started having fun with them, saying he was going to buy Canada and all that stuff. He was just having a good time poking fun, because Freeland and Trudeau during his first term threw a lot of darts at him. If you go back to term 1 of Trump. So he was just throwing them back at them, saying, hey, I'm on my way to being president. You guys missed the ball. And nobody thought that would make a difference. But Carney's very smart, and he picked that up.
It typically doesn't with Trump make a difference. I mean, Mamdani, we saw him say, call me a fascist. I don't care. Yeah. He is impervious to the insults. I mean, his vice president at one point called him a Nazi. So.
Yeah, but I mean, Danielle Smith, to her credit, I was dealing with her on another project up in Alberta, and she decided wanted to go down and see Trump before he became president when everything was off the record. So we went down together and spent 3 days there, and got invited to the Sunday morning brunch at the golf club, which is where it's very private, and she met one-on-one with Trump. Yeah. And she has no tariffs now on her oil. How about that? Yeah. Because she befriended Burgum and many of the other administrations. She was smart too, but when she got back to Canada, they fried her like a chicken in the press. But Pierre, the head of the Conservative Party, Poilievre, he didn't do that. He decided that he too would take on Trump, who would have been his natural political ally had he gone and spent some time in Mar-a-Lago. Unfortunately for him, and I'll wrap the story up, if you look at the history of the parliamentary system in Australia and England and in Canada, a majority mandate winner, which would be Carney, only gets 12 to 18 months before another election. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. However, worse for Pierre, and this is very unfortunate for him, every time a conservative misses an open net, defined by 20% ahead or more, he was 30 plus, they get whacked. Yeah. And the whacking will probably happen for him in January. And that's the end of him, because nobody believes he can bring a majority mandate back.
It's too bad. I like him. I mean, that video that went viral in the U.S. of him eating the apple and showing complete contempt.
That was at the height.
He
was
amazing.
At 31%
That
ahead.
was great. That's when I was like, I really like this guy, just because that's how, I mean, the way Trump treats the media, I think sometimes goes way overboard, but that kind of contempt people love. And I thought that was great.
It was brilliant, but he didn't take that momentum and run with it. And I feel sorry for him, but he'll probably be in the history book soon.
Yeah. I mean, but when you say something, the woman from Alberta? You said it was a man or a woman?
Yeah,
that
no,
came in?
she's the premier of Alberta.
Oh, she's the premier. You
Yeah.
say, so she goes down to Mar-a-Lago,
Yeah.
plays the game, spends 3 days there, comes back.
Danielle Smith. Yeah.
No tariffs. Do we like that in the sense that, I mean, Milton Friedman would always say that, the greatest enemy of capitalism are capitalists because they like regulation against their enemies. They like
Right.
a state that is.
Right.
Is that a way to run a tariff policy, a economic policy where the people come down and are nice to you and, kiss up to you? They get the favored treatment. You can't love that.
I think you're simplifying what happened there because really,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just hearing from what you said.
No,
Yeah,
but basically, what people didn't realize, and why you saw the Italian prime minister there, you saw all of these countries coming to these Thursday, Friday, Saturday night dinners. I attended many of them. World leaders came on an unofficial basis to spend some social time to get to know the man and understand how he works, because that's how he is. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but the deal itself for no tariffs was more likely negotiated by Doug Burgum, who became the energy czar, because he realized the Cushing facilities in Oklahoma, billions of dollars invested in those refineries, can only take bitumen from Alberta. Yeah. So why tariff your own energy source? That makes no sense. And so they removed the tariffs. And so at the end of the day, I think it's more being pragmatic and understanding that all things are personal with Trump, and they are. Yeah. And you could see, I would argue to you that Trudeau got kicked out because of, well, how poor, and he had no executional skills, but also the end game was horrible for him. I mean, he was trying to tell people, look, I can deal with this Trump guy, and Trump was treating him like a cartoon character. Mm-hmm. So the country threw him out, which was good for the country. I just wish whoever became prime minister in Canada had a majority mandate, because you can't really get anything done up there unless you have a majority mandate. And I think you're starting to see some of those problems with Carney himself.
What do you think about the tariff policy in general, which, we used to talk about in the show quite a bit, and worried that it would bore the hell out of people. And it didn't, actually. People really engaged in it and realized on a day-to-day basis stuff they used to order online from Temu or AliExpress or just their groceries in general. I'm very libertarian in my economic outlook. I don't like tariffs for that reason. I don't like taxes on the American people for that reason. I do understand the necessity of them for negotiating certain things. But the Trump way of going about it, the taco, Trump, what was it? Not Trump always caves, Trump always chickens out. Yeah. That kind of thing, that willy-nilly thing. We don't know what's going to happen. Businesses can't plan ahead because of these things. What do you make of the way it's been rolled out? And also just writ large tariffs in general. I mean, you're a business guy. I'm sure you have a lot of things crossing borders and companies that you've invested in.
Well, I'll answer it in two ways, because if you don't, by now you know how Trump operates.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had him for 10 years in your face.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change. And so it is what it is. Now, the tariffs themselves and where I think the market believes all of this is going is going to look like this. The whole tariff narrative started because of value-added taxes in other countries. So if you go to Italy or you go to Switzerland has an 8.3% value-added tax.
Sweden, where I used to live, is 25%.
Right. Okay. So Canada's 13.8. In some provinces, it's lower in others. But the point is, you take an American product, any product, and you sell it in France or Italy or Canada or Australia or Britain. That government imposes a value-added tax on that sale. It's essentially a tariff. There's no difference. But those value-added taxes are generally sub 15%, probably on average just under 10, all in aggregate in the major markets, India included. And so let's take a case study like Switzerland. So
it's essentially a sales tax for people who don't know what VAT is.
Right. It's a sales tax, value-added tax, they call it, VAT tax. Yeah. And you would know it if you went to France and bought a handbag. You get your VAT back at the airport, of which most people don't do because it's such a pain in the ass. Yeah. So, So if you think about what would be reciprocal, would be here Congress has never contemplated for the American public a value-added tax. It's just un-American in their view. So it's never going to be imposed. However, a tariff has a nice ring to it, but it's essentially the same thing. So let's take a case study, make it real easy. Switzerland, they sell about $5 billion worth of watches into the United States. But they sell far more gold 1 kilogram bars and 100-gram bars with UBS assay certs tied to them. Mm-hmm. All institutional investors want is the UBS Swiss gold bar. They don't want the Canadian, they don't want the Australian, they don't want anybody else's. And the reason is those bars are essentially a currency, and I'll tell you why. You can take a UBS bar, bring it to any UBS teller in Switzerland, and it's like a demand note for any currency you want. And so if it has the cert on it, and every investor knows that, they want to buy those bars from Switzerland. And that's where the trade imbalance is. There's no trade imbalance with Switzerland except in gold bars. So Trump imposes a 39% tariff on Switzerland. Why? Because he wants them to make the gold bars with American gold in a smelting facility in the United States. Now, whether the Swiss do that or not is unknown, but they also imposed 39% on all other Swiss goods coming into the U.S., including watches, which I care about. I'm a watch collector, and so does every other watch collector. That's an absurd tariff. I mean,
you're not buying $100 watches.
No, I'm not.
You're buying very expensive watches.
I mean, I am.
So that tariff is really hitting your pocket.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
And so, and I just stopped buying watches. So did every other collector, because you can't pay. It's essentially a 42% tax. And if you're spending, $500,000 on a watch, it just changes the economics.
Yeah.
So the reciprocal tariff on Switzerland should be 8.3% on everything. And it would be very easy to impose that, because that's kind of what the Swiss charge the Americans. Mm-hmm. The market believes, as these deals get negotiated, the ones still pending are the Indian one, the Canadian one. There's others that have pieces to them. But at the end of the day, that's where we're going, reciprocal tariffs. Mm-hmm. Now, the granddaddy deal is China, but there's other components to that. That includes IP theft, the TikTok deal. There's so many moving parts.
Selling NVIDIA chips there.
All that stuff. It's all part, and that will not be resolved by the midterms. It just won't be. I personally think that policy on not allowing American technology to be sold to one country or another is sheer stupidity. I mean, that just gives an incentive for Chinese investment into tech to replace our technology in every country we don't sell it to, which is nuts. That's bad policy. There's a bill throwing around at Washington right now, supposedly bipartisan. I think it's very bad policy to impose that.
What do you think about that? I mean, you when you talk about the bipartisan nature of some of this stuff, I mean, as somebody, who knew Republicans as people that were sort of proximate to the Cato Institute and free market types, then you see people like Josh Hawley, J.D. Vance,
right.
Matt Gaetz, these people who love Lena Khan,
yeah.
who have actually said, I'm a fan of Lena Khan. These are people on the Republican side, one of whom is the vice president. That kind of populist economics coming from the right now, does that surprise you? It kind of surprised me that it got up that. There's usually a few people that are like the old Pat Buchanan types that are the populists in economics. And the idea of tariffs is not so much that it's going to be reciprocal, but they were going to bring factory production back home because it's going to be so expensive here. We'll make it here. This kind of simple-minded economics. But, you're a capitalist, right? Yeah. And you have people on the Republican side who are leaning so heavily away from that kind of old free market style of conservatism and economics. Does that worry you in any way?
No, because what I've learned, spending so much time in Washington in the last few years, I worked on the Big and Beautiful Bill, whatever you want to call it, as an advocate for small business companies. People don't realize in the economy, in the American economy, 73% of jobs are created by companies that have 5 to 500 employees. These are primarily private companies, first, second, third generation. They are the backbone of the economy. They have no advocate because they can't afford lobbyists. These are companies doing 5 to 50 million in sales. They don't hire expensive lobbyists. The S&P 500 does that. So I'm their advocate. I'm one of their advocates. Now, I'm very fortunate to be able to be bipartisan because of what Shark Tank has done for me over 17 years. Mm-hmm. Television gives you access to world leaders. That's what it does.
Yeah.
So it's a huge commitment, but if you don't have access, you can't do business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about entrepreneurship, which is bipartisan. I can go sit down with Elizabeth Warren, AOC, any right-wing guy, it doesn't matter. They want to create jobs in their jurisdiction. And so I can waltz in and out of these
I'm not
offices.
sure AOC does. She prevented a lot of
We
Amazon jobs.
know, but she's starting to realize now you really can't do anything if you can't employ anybody. I mean, sort of, you might be changing her tune if she has, she's inspired to run for the presidency. We'll wait and see. But basically what I've learned is the policy is written at the staffer level. I got involved in some great detail into the tax bill that finally got passed. It was a very complicated negotiation. They were contemplating having a 9-year audit period on any small business that took ERC, just claiming they were all fraudulent, which is just ridiculous. And so that would have made it impossible to borrow money if you think you were under the threat of a federal audit. And so we got that changed back to the original 36 months, and that was very important for small business. And I was a big part of the whole ERC program. Our companies would have died without that. So it's sort of understanding how that worked. And the first thing everybody should understand is senators or members of the House do not write policy. Their staffers do.
Correct.
And unless you get in the weeds with the staffers, you have no impact at all. Now, the gatekeeper to the staffers, there's usually a lead staffer that is actually penning the law. Yeah. They're writing it, and they're working with other staffers in a team, 3 to 5. And if you're going to make a change in Washington, you're going to have to get deep in the weeds, and that means you're going to get access through the senator or through the House member or whatever it is. But it's a negotiation, and I've kind of learned that it's not politics that gets you ahead, it's policy. And so when I hear, Vance does this or someone does that, that's not policy. That's just rhetoric for the news bite of the day, and we should all be used to that noise. But it's not policy. And so when
will be translated into policy?
Well, if it gets translated, but you get a long shot at nipping that in the bud on its way to being passed as a bill. And so when I hear stupid policy that's going to hurt business that I'm involved in, I get active. I go and see the actual people writing it and saying, let me say to you, they're willing to listen. They're always willing to listen. I'm very fortunate to get access. And I say, look, here's why this is bad law. Here's what you should consider. This is why it's bad. But I also do what I'm doing with you right now and start lobbying my base for why that's stupid law. And the one I'm going after right now is this bill, this supposed bipartisan bill that says the government should decide who gets to buy technology made by the private sector, which is chips right now is what it's focused on, NVIDIA, AMD. This is incredibly bad policy. I'm a big China hawk. I know how those guys operate. I once was involved in a group trying to buy Huawei back in the 90s with Bain Capital. And I know how they work. The government are not good guys. The people of China are great. But we're in an economic war with them. We're in hopefully not a physical war one day, but we're certainly, they want to become the world's largest economy. They want to beat us in AI for sure. They want to be world dominators. That's bad outcome. And so we need policy to fight that. And the first thing we should do is flood their market with all of our technology so that their coders write American platforms. And this is how you win. I keep reminding people the reason NASA exists is that we convinced our adversaries in Germany that made the V2 rocket to move to the United States with their families because it was a better place to live.
Wernher von Braun, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Better place to live. And so I don't see a lot of people trying to sneak into China to go work in a concentration camp somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in China who like to come to the United States, be taught here and stay here and build businesses. And any policy that keeps out foreign students or keeps out geniuses born there, there's no monopoly on where geniuses are born. They come in India and Egypt and China. Bring them to America the way we always did.
Trump has angered a lot of people in his base by talking about H-1Bs. And, he had an interview with Laura Ingraham. He said, these should be jobs for Americans. And he said, And I'm glad that he did. He said, well, we don't have these people. We can't sort of manifest them out of thin air and say, these are the programmers, these are the engineers that we need. We have to, get these people to come here, which I was, he said that in the past in the All In podcast before he was elected, that, we do need people. And he was talking about tying visas to people graduating from PhD programs at, MIT or something. But there is a kind of simple-minded thing that is really dominating the way people think about economics these days, that we can just have Americans do this. We can prevent China from getting the chips by just withholding them from them. That's it. I think when people look up capitalist in the dictionary these days, they see you, or they think of you, and you see Mamdani here. And these are upper middle class voters in Brooklyn. They're people that are voting for him. There's not working class people that are voting for Mamdani if you look at that split. Why do you think that there is such a voguish moment for these types of politics, whether they're socialist politics, social democratic politics? Why is it so hard for capitalists to make the case? And why has it become increasingly hard for them to say the best way to do this is that the market society? I'll give you examples. I was talking to a guy the other night who's VC, and he does biotech stuff. And he said, we sold this company for this enormous amount of money, and the number of lives it has saved during open heart surgery was astronomical. I'm just believing this. And I said to him, this is amazing because you got rich from this. And you went after this company because you said, I can make a ton of money. And the number of people that benefited down the line, whose lives were saved because of your profit motive, that's incalculable. It's very hard to make that case to people in New York City, college-educated people that want the Mamdanis having a grocery store run by the city, or having free this and free that in rent control. Every economist knows that rent control is a failure, but we're voting for it in New York City, a very educated city. Why are we in this moment now where the capitalists are on the back foot?
Social media. And so Mamdani was way better than anybody else in understanding the power of social media and how to actually use it. If you look at his posts, they were always in the top quartile of engagement. So he hired the right team, focused on message, did a fantastic job. He beat all the other wannabes by miles.
Yeah,
and
Cuomo had no campaign,
Yeah, and I mean, they had no campaign at all. They just thought, I'm not Mamdani, that's why I'll win. And they lost. And so the challenge, though, and why I think the system always self-corrects is the best campaign slogan for New York City has always been money for nothing, chicks for free. That's always worked 100% of the time. They all do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's a city. They're a mayor. They don't control the state finances. That's in the legislature. His campaign was free everything. And so the reality when he takes over in January is he won't be able to deliver any of that. And that's where the rubber hits the road. He will have to find policy. I'm a real estate developer. I didn't get a chance to meet with him because I couldn't understand why he wouldn't want to talk to me or anybody in real estate. He has a huge mandate to build affordable.
Did you try?
Oh, yeah. I reached out.
And
they blew me off.
Yeah.
And they blew everybody off, actually, because they were winning. They didn't need to talk to me. But my question was very simple. Look, I raise capital. I develop real estate. You're telling everybody your mandate is affordable housing. I would love to invest in affordable housing. If I can get a permit in New York, I would do it right away. However, you have to explain to me how I go to the debt markets when you're doing rent control on an unbuilt building. Unstabilized building, it's called. You're asking me to take people's money, your people's money, retirees' money, and make no return on it. How is that going to work? Can you give me the pathway to how that's going to work, unless you can give me free money? And if you let me make money building the building and you know how to run it and get a return and provide the CapEx to maintain it, I don't think he understands any of that. And so that's when the policy will start to fray and it will self-correct. It even happened nationally in the last election. I mean, the mandate that was being, the Democratic Party went too far to the left and it snapped back into the middle with Trump. That was his big opportunity. He won all the 7 contests, the close states. He cleaned up because he had a very simple message. And I'm not shilling for Trump because there's some policy he has I don't agree with. We talked about the students. We talked about the chips. I don't agree with that policy. I don't shill for politicians. I shill for good policy. And I've watched it for decades, work and not work. So this guy in New York, I predict in about 18 months, there'll be a lot of chaos in his camp, and they're going to have to do some soul searching if he wants to stay in power, because all those people that were promised money for nothing, chicks for free, are going to be really pissed because they didn't get any of it, and they won't.
What do you make? My friend, and I hate to denounce him, he's not here, Andrew Schultz, the comedian who's very big on social media, had Mamdani on the show. And he's a very wealthy guy now, Andrew. And he said, hey, I'm the guy that this is going to hit. It's only a couple of percent more for rich people to pay into the city's coffers. I don't mind. It's not a big deal. No one's going to leave. And I've seen a lot of people make that argument. I mean, you have money. You're not a resident of New York City, are you?
No. I make sure and I track
to not
it.
be a resident of New York
City. I stay in a favorite hotel. I'll never buy a place here. I don't want to be involved in any of this.
But a couple extra percent. People say that on there's obviously federal tax, state tax here in New York City. For those people who don't know, we have a city tax.
Yeah, I think it's 54% now, right?
It's hovering in Norwegian, Danish territory. But a couple more percent, the argument is they can pay it. These guys can pay it. Paul Singer can pay it.
That's not exactly true. What happens is on the increment, this is where it hurts you. When people retire, they hit 65, they hit 70, and they look at their options in terms of weather and lifestyle, and that's why you're seeing thousands of licenses move to Florida, Tennessee, Texas. Better weather, better policy, but the incremental difference in taxes pays for the house when you move down there. If somebody retiring with $4 or $5 million, maybe if they're lucky, they don't want to pay 54% because they're retiring. And so what happens is you get an erosion of the tax base. It's slow but sure. And then you put more and more burden and you keep saying another 2%, another 2%. It's kind of an Atlas Shrugged moment if you read Ayn Rand on that. But it's happening in New York. And this is, one of the capitals of capital in the world. But there's a lot of global competition now. I would never start a business here. I actually started one in Abu Dhabi, 9% tax. Mm-hmm. And I actively invest globally, so why would I do that? Why would I put it in New York? I don't have to. Mm-hmm. And the competition of states and geographies is active, and the world is getting a smaller place in terms of the flow of capital. So I operate in the U.S. out of Florida, like everybody else does that used to live in Boston. All my Boston neighbors are in their 60s. They all live near me. We all moved down there in mass exodus with Elizabeth Warren's crazy super tax crap. And my son's still there and he's loving it. But when he starts his company, it probably won't be in Boston because he has to attract people to live and work. And that's why the competition of states, I look at Nashville, Tennessee, and I look at Austin, Texas, and Miami, Florida. My goodness, they're exploding.
In Miami, the mayor of Miami, who made an active push to this is going to be the crypto city, at the same time that New York was regulating the hell out of crypto. And if you had crypto, it was impossible to even get it if it was in Binance or something like this.
That was a few years ago. Yeah. But I would argue today the best real estate agent in Miami is Mamdani. He's doing a hell of a good job. Yeah. He's getting everybody moving down to Florida in a beautiful way that's in the retirement zone. Yeah. And that's the first erosion.
If you search your name on YouTube, you get a bazillion results, but the stuff that's always the top of those results are people trying to figure out on an individual level who are nowhere near your level of wealth or, all these rich people who are moving to Florida. And they just want to know how to make money and how to keep more of their money.
Yeah.
That's the question I'm sure that you're asked more than any other thing beyond like who was the biggest success on Shark Tank, which weirdly was a cat DNA thing, which maybe we can talk about. It's absolutely baffling to me. But when people ask you those questions, which seem like pretty basic questions I saw you talking about marriage, which was an amazing thing, and about, that finances break up more marriages in your opinion.
That's true.
And that's actually true. You actually know that as a
Yeah,
fact.
well, I
It's
did
just
the
a
research for
speculation,
my
yeah.
first book on that. I was stunned to find that out. That it basically works this way. If you look,
People suck with money, don't they?
well, it's
A lot of people do.
Yeah, remarkably, I've got this long history of investing in entrepreneurs, and maybe a third of them are successful and they get a big exit at some point after 5 to 7 years. They turn out to be really shitty investors. They're fantastic entrepreneurs. They have great executional skills, but they have no idea of the concept of diversification or how to invest because they've only invested in themselves and they've never really put any money anywhere else. And I try and help them, because some of them walk away with $200, $300, $400 million. And there's a certain way you have to deal with that afterwards because family comes after you, everybody comes after you. And it's very disconcerting for a while to understand how that works. But in wealth creation, in the American economy, if you're in your 20s, the numbers are quite simple. About a third of the population can be an entrepreneur. They have this innate skill to be able to discern between what's signal and what's noise to run a business. Very hard. And I learned this from Steve Jobs. I told this story countless times. He was not a nice guy, but in the 90s, I made all of his software for the Mac in schools, 110,000 buildings. He was an absolute asshole, but he taught me some very important things, and he was wildly successful. He said that each day, including you, each day, there will be 3 things you have to get done. Just 3. And that's called the signal. And there's going to be a plethora of things that are going to stop you from doing that. And that's called the noise. And so the only thing you have to get good at in your life to be an entrepreneur is to distinguish what's signal and what's noise. And then you do not let noise get in the way of getting the 3 things done. They get done first. If you do that...
It's a hard filter, though, for particularly now when there's more distractions.
Oh,
than
massive
actually,
distraction. But the point is, Jobs was 80% signal, 20% noise. And the challenge with that is that you're not a very social person because you don't want to waste any time on noise. So even your own staff comes in and says, look, I want to talk to you about this. And you know that's noise, you blow them off. And so that's why he was the asshole he was. But he was so effective that I started to realize watching him, and I worked for years making that software, how this was working because his whole metric was, look, I'm not worried about what people think of me. I'm not trying to make friends. They will follow me if I'm successful. And the only way to be successful is to focus on the signal. And he was right. And I've changed my life that way too. The only person in my life that I've had small dealings with that has more of, that it's actually 100% signal is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
He does not waste any time. And so you get these really weird moments with him where all of a sudden he figures out it's not signal. He just walks away. But look what he's achieved. And look what he's achieving. And so you have to understand that this metric has to be balanced. But the only challenge is with your own family. You can't treat your family as noise.
No.
So you've got to allocate some period of your week to taking care of them. But I'm really a big believer in this now. And so going back to the concept of how you make money, only a third of the population can do it. I teach at Harvard now. I teach at MIT, generally graduate classes about this kind of philosophy. But I recognize within the class that only 1/3 of them are going to make it, and the others are going to lead a life of mediocrity as consultants.
But they're incredibly smart people that will be mediocre consultants. Presumably.
Well, consulting itself is a life of mediocrity.
Yes.
It's a failure of a human soul. I mean, it's just, and there's a special place in hell for when consultants die. It's below hell.
Yeah.
And
Sub-hell is full of
sub-hell. And I
consultants.
try and tell them, if I can convince one of you consultants not to be a consultant and come over to this side, I have saved a human soul. The rest of you,
I'm not even sure what consultants do, and I'm not sure half of them know what they do. And I've asked some of them.
Well, they should be worried. They should be worried a lot because AI is replacing a lot of what they do.
Yeah.
They never make any decisions of consequence. And after 2 years, they have what's called consultant virus. They're tainted. They can't ever be a CEO. And I take those, when I get my applications and I see they've worked at ABC consulting firm for 36 months, I put it in the garbage. That's soulless.
Just for having worked there, the taint of that is so great that you immediately throw it away.
The soul is lost. They'll never be an entrepreneur. They've never felt the sting of failure of a decision they've made that had consequence.
Would there be any noticeable difference in the business world if you took companies like Accenture, these big consulting firms, threw them in the garbage, banned them from existing? Does that have any appreciable effect on any business? Do they actually do anything that is worthwhile?
What they do is when you have a massive infrastructure project and you need to build a model, and so that you can go to the debt markets or the equity markets and show that you've stress tested your economic assumptions, that's complex work.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of work I give consultants, but I never let them make decisions for me in terms of a mission critical decision, because they've never made one that none of them have ever made a decision of consequence and made a mistake.
Yeah.
It's your mistake. They tell you should do this, and then you have to make the critical decision. What do I need a consultant for that?
Yeah.
So there's a use for them, and I do spend millions of dollars on them, and they do fantastic model work. But they are lost souls, and I always feel bad for them, and I take them up for dinners and stuff before they go to hell. I mean, what else can I do?
Can you be successful in the way that you're successful? And I'm not implying that you're an asshole, but the asshole thing, right?
Yeah.
Every really successful person that I've worked for and worked with I always get along with them, but they're always notorious and known as assholes. The Steve Jobs. I mean, you frame that in an interesting way that it's somebody just separating signal from noise, and that can come across. But you also think he was an asshole, like personally kind of an asshole.
I know he was an asshole.
Yeah.
But I have a tremendous, I was with him watching him berate my staff and his, and I said, Steve, you're an asshole. Like, you got to stop. You're not, what's this energy beating up my product manager that wants to spend $12 million on product research? And he said to her, they don't know what they want until I tell them that. I'll tell them what they want.
But it's true.
It's true, and it is true. But it's the way he did it, because he didn't want to waste time debating it.
Yeah.
He just didn't want to waste time. And
Is that a good quality?
It is, actually, because we're trying to make some critical decisions about the direction of Oregon Trail or Read a Rabbit, which is going to ship millions of copies to kids that are 7 years old to advance their reading or math skills. And it matters. It's on a Mac. We have to rewrite the thing for a Mac. And so these meetings, there's a great woman in there beside him, Heidi Rosen. She's still around. I talk to her occasionally. She would try and fix the shit trail of a meeting after working with Jobs, like just an absolute, snail scum on the floor of destruction. And she would fix it afterwards because she could work with Steve directly, and she's a martyr for that. She's a phenomenal person and a great venture capitalist later, because she understood the genius of Jobs, but could kind of negotiate with the people around that would leave the room with their hair on fire.
But Jobs understood that her job was necessary to kind of pick up the pieces and have that.
And she was great at it, and she should be given a lot of credit for the success of Apple in the early days, and I don't think she gets enough credit for it. But the point is, that's how it worked, and everybody understood that. Yeah. But it's decisions were made, and mandates were given, and we got product out, and we all made money. And Jobs said to me one day, "Look, you can call me an asshole, but how much money are we making together?" I said, "A lot, Steve." He said, "Well, shut up and just listen to what I say." Yeah, and I did. And I learned.
Could he have done that, though, with the same brain, the sort of same ideas about technology, but somebody that has a, reasonable countenance and can be a nice person? And the reason I ask this is because it is just so common of the people that I see that are incredibly successful that they have almost, in some cases, a personality disorder, that are like, they're rude to be around, rude to staff. And it's like, you start wondering, the nice guys finish last thing. Is that true? I mean, do you know people of the sort of size and magnitude of the success of Steve Jobs, who is just kind of generically somebody to describe as a pretty nice guy, as somebody who's, helpful to everybody? Or is that quality necessary to be that successful?
What you're seeing is a person locked on the signal. And you don't, that's really, and you're interpreting it as being an asshole.
Sure, yeah.
But they're locked on the signal, and they're not assholes. I give those kinds of people a lot of berth, a lot of room. And I have friends with many of them and know them very well. And they understand that I know what motivates them, and I know they're locked on the signal. And so we can actually meet up and people say, why do you even spend time with that asshole? I know why I spend time with that asshole. I learn a lot. And so, I'm learning a lot about a sector or business or something I'm going to invest in, and I want to invest in. I invest in a lot of assholes because they're so locked on the signal. And it doesn't bother me at all. It's very funny that you bring this topic up, and I'll tell you a brief story that I think is interesting because 20 years ago in a hotel called Shutters, I think it's in Santa Monica, I was sitting down, as you and I are right now, across from Mark Burnett, who said to me,
the TV producer, Mark Burnett.
The famous now television producer, Mark Burnett.
The Trump show, yeah.
Yeah. And another guy named Chili Crew, his international sales guy. And he sat me down and said, Mr. O'Leary, look, I'm casting for a new show I'm producing called Shark Tank. And I'm looking for a real asshole, and you're it. And I said, well, I'm honored. I just don't know if that's...
What a great sales pitch.
If it's a compliment or nice, it doesn't matter. Can we test? Yeah. And then, we went on to achieve together extraordinary platform that Shark Tank has become. And then last summer, on my dock at my lake house up in Canada, July 25th, I think it was, Josh Safdie, Ronnie Bronstein, the co-writers of this movie, Marty Supreme, and Eli Bush, the producer, sitting on my dock, were reading the script together, and they said, Kevin, this role of Milton Rockwell, 1952 richest man in America, he is an absolute asshole, and you're it. And so this asshole thing's working for me. It's very interesting. And I've seen
people tend not to come to me, call me an asshole, and then want to give me jobs and money. So I don't know what the hell you're doing.
And I say to people, it's sort of funny, but if I'm the leader of the asshole nation, I say to all of you assholes out there is light at the end of the sphincter.
But it's also, you're good at TV. You're good on that show. Elon Musk could never do that show. It would be the most awkward, hour in television. And this is taking nothing away from Elon Musk and his unbelievable gifts and abilities, but he is 100% signal in zero noise. So he would walk away from, as you say, any conversation if it's not being productive at that very, very moment. But the personality that you need for television, the kind of gift to kind of, interact with the audience when you don't see the audience, is something that's a little different, right? It's not, most business people can't do that.
Yeah, I think maybe it's
Trump can because he's funny. He's an extremely funny
I
guy.
worked with Trump selling the forwards the year that he was on Celebrity Apprentice, and Mark Burnett was producing that too. And we went to New York, and we walked into the automotive companies because they were buying most of the advertising on network television in those days. That guy has an aura. Everybody knows that now, but I watched him work a room. This guy was good. Yeah. And he's a salesman. That's what he is. And he sells stuff. Yeah. And he sold a lot of forward advertising. The guy is good at selling stuff. And you can't deny it. Whether you like him or you hate him, it's sort of, at the end of the day, he's pretty good at signal too. He knows where the prize is, and he focuses on it, and doesn't let people get in his way. And it's sort of, even my own family, I have to deal with Trump derangement syndrome every day. It's just unbelievable how much energy people go into hating him. And I just say, why do we have to care about this? You know what you've got with him. Yeah. And I just rather talk about the policy, the ones I agree with and the ones I don't, and the ones I shill for and the ones I don't. I use my platform to say this is a stupid policy, and I get my fair time. I've testified in the Senate countless times on topics because I get access to them. I say, guys, this is a stupid policy, and here's my point of view. You don't have to listen to me, but you should hear it, and you should put that in your head and think about why I'm wrong. The whole point of arguing to the Senate is prove me wrong. Show me the data that says I'm wrong, because I'm a numbers guy.
That's the worst place to do it. Speaking of AI stuff, remember the Mark Zuckerberg testifying before Congress in a series of members of Congress discovering that Facebook made its money on advertising. And to watch that and to say, oh, these are the people that you have to convince. You're not, publicly doing it to the guy that's writing the bills. You're doing it to the people that are sitting in those seats, and they know nothing in such a there are some people that are very, very good, by the way. Like, I mean, guys like Chip Roy, who knows a lot about stuff. You know, even the
Rick
ones
Scott,
Rick Scott, Tom Massey, who everybody
Haggerty.
hates. Yeah, there are people who are talented, but there's so many buffoons and bozos in there. 435 people, you're going to get a
You
high.
have to treat them all equally, though. You can't call one a bozo and another, a genius. It's an organization. It's a living, breathing organization. You have to be persuasive on your point of view and leave them with reasons to think about why you're right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Persuasion is a huge part of this, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a form of lobbying, but I'm not being paid by anybody to lobby. I don't do that. I don't need that. But I really feel when I see bad policy, I want to fix. I can't stand bad policy. It's just it takes you back.
We're drowning in it, though, right?
I know we are. We got a lot of issues, but and I understand that.
I mean, when you have a new company, whatever it is, X company that makes widgets, you know that a huge percentage of your energy, if it's a reasonable sized company, is going to fighting the regulators, to realizing what the state, the city will allow you to do, whether it's building a building or starting a crypto exchange.
Yeah.
All of that, those interfaces are all with the government, right? I mean, that's the problem that you have to start with from day one.
You're right. You're very astute on that. And I must tell you what I've learned as I've gotten into larger and larger investments, particularly in infrastructure and data centers, where it's multi-billion. You can't do it without the governor, or in the case of Canada, the premier of the province. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And so the only way is you must form an alliance with indigenous tribe that maybe you're dealing with water rights, or whoever is dealing with the air rights. And you are becoming that politician to go and negotiate with them to advance the project. And, this is where policy really, really matters. Right now, you're hearing every day about how much money is being invested in data centers. Let's use that for an example. Yeah. In my life as a real estate investor, and real estate's always a third of my portfolio. So I've done climate control storage, commercial facilities, single family dwelling, high-end condos, all that stuff. And I'm comfortable taking the risks of real estate development and understand how it works. And I have a great team that does it with me, and great investors and all that stuff. But data centers, in my entire career, I have never seen capital flows like this ever. So I know this is real. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly complex, but this is where federal policy really matters, because we're tapped out on the grid now. There's no more power. Mm-hmm. And so you may want to build a data center, but you can't get a gigawatt of power anywhere, because the rates for the hospital and the school and the residences will go through the roof. And I've kind of realized now it's like a giant Shark Tank. That's what it is. You're basically pitching governments about why you can execute on this and how you're going to do it. And I remember 2, maybe 3 years ago, going back to the Canadian story, the opportunity Canada has now has just emerged in the last 2 years. They have the lowest cost of power in North America, hydro and natural gas.
In Quebec especially.
Well,
right? Yes.
Alberta actually has 6 trillion cubes of stranded nat gas, the lowest cost power in North America. Yeah. It's massive, and it's accessible. And so
but there is a lot of hydro. It's in Quebec. I remember people
hydro
doing,
in Manitoba.
They were like doing
there's
Bitcoin
massive
mining.
amounts
We're
of
going
power,
there,
but you can't get permits. And under the Idiot King, 0 permits were issued.
Yeah.
So no one went there anymore to even consider doing anything there. And I remember 2 years ago, I got a phone call from someone in Alberta and said, "Look, I know you're looking in North Dakota near Fargo, which is very close, to the border. Why aren't you looking here?" And I said, "Well, everybody knows the Idiot King doesn't allow this stuff. And why am I going to go spend $5 million in engineering studies to know he's going to screw me? He screws everybody." And so, no, I'm not coming up there. He said, "Well, this Premier Daniel Smith sued the Idiot King in October of 2023 and beat him federally and got a mandate to build power facilities that don't attach to the grid outside of Alberta." And that was like a bing.
Yeah.
I said, "Is that true? Because I've never heard of that." He said, "Yeah, why don't you call the premier up?" Which I did. And she told me, "It's true. I have that right, but nobody believes me." I said, "Yeah, me too. I don't believe you either. Like, it's I'm having a hard time with it." She said, "Why don't you fly your team up here and you can meet with the, the administration, and you can fly around and look at our facilities." And I sent Carl Agren, who's legendary. He's works with me now from Dubai. He's the guy that built the very first Navy data center back in 2018, the first guy that actually built one. And he flew up there, and I'll never forget it. You know, you can't make a phone call on a chopper on your cell phone because it whap, 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 whap. It's really loud. And you're whipping through cell towers. It breaks up all the time. He lands, and I can still hear the chopper whirling, and he's trying to get away so he can make the call. And he says to me, "Boss, buy it all. Buy everything," which I did. He said, "I've never, ever, ever, and I've been all around the world looking for sites for data centers, see anything like this." So Alberta now has the largest data center in the world under construction, 17 gigawatts, which will take about 8 years to build.
And you're involved in this, and
it's called Wonder Valley. Yeah,
it's yours.
It's mine. But I obviously, by the time I'm the majority shareholder, but obviously by the time I finish financing this, I'm going to be a small piece.
Yeah.
This is $70 billion US.
Why do you do it? In the sense that you have a lot of money. What motivates you to get that call from him and say, buy it all? And I mean, is it for the good of humanity? Is it because, you know, AI is taking over? You want your fingerprints on it? You don't need the money.
No, it's true. But I'll tell you something that motivates me. And it still does every day. And it will forever until I die, which I'm planning not to.
Yeah.
You know, I love it when somebody says to me, "You can't do that. That's impossible. You can't do that. You can't do it. It just is. You cannot do anything like that. It'll never happen." That is so motivating for me. It's just, watch this. Fuck you and watch this. I just did it in the watch insurance business. I started it 2 years ago when everybody told me, you can't break into that business. You will never convince 50 regulators to let you do this. You will never form a partnership with enough of the underwriters to do it. That was all I needed. I'm the fastest growing watch insurance company in the world right now.
Watch insurance.
I'll tell you why. You want to insure your watch this way. If you put it on your house, I learned the hard way, and your watch is stolen, your whole house premium goes up. Nobody steals houses. They steal watches and jewelry and handbags. You're very stupid to put that on your house policy. You can save a lot of money taking it off the house and just putting it on a separate policy. You probably save 30, 40, 50 basis points every year. But nobody had the ability to communicate that to anybody until social media came along. So I went to Chubb and I said, let's partner. And they said, never. You'll never get the customer acquisition costs down. You'll never make any money. Everybody's tried this. They never make any money. I said, okay, what would it take for you to do this with me? Why don't you show us you can acquire customers? Show us how many policy requests you can get. If you could, I said, well, what would be a number? He said, well, if you can get 300 people on social media ask for a watch insurance policy. I said, okay, watch this. We made a 15-second ad. We stuck it on my network of 11.1 million people. Everybody knows I'm a watch guy. 3,500 policy requests in 20 hours. And they said, wow, okay then. And that's WonderCare. You can go to wondercare.com right now and buy watch insurance. And our last month's growth was 40% on policies, up 40%. That started with somebody saying, you can't do this. And my answer, fuck you, watch this. That's what motivates me. And it always will. I love people telling me I can't do stuff. Mm-hmm. It's probably from back when I was dyslexic. You can't make it in school. Fuck you, watch this. So I think that's very motivating. Don't you think that works?
Yeah, no. I mean, you have to have a pretty decent success ratio, right? I mean, if somebody says you can't do this.
I fail all the time.
How often do you fail? What's your
half
percentage?
At least. But I have enough successes that pay for all the mistakes. I bet you 50% of what I start fails or I invest in fails. And the thing you have to do in failure is recognize you have to take it behind the barn and shoot it because it's wasting your time.
Yeah,
it's it's all the noise and all the shit that you shouldn't be doing. When it's failing, you have to shoot it. And that's what I've become very good at, including firing everybody, because I want them to have a chance to do something successful. And that's the idea. I'm very good at that. And that I'm going to give credit way back to Jobs that we talked about earlier. When it's a dog, it's a dog. And there's nothing you can do. You have to take that rabid dog behind the barn and put one right between the eyes.
Because like confidence in narcissism are kind of different instincts. I think I want to get your opinion on this because I've worked for people who have been very successful and done things that were pretty extraordinary, and then got it in their head that they knew everything about everything. Is this a disease that you see as much as I do, is that, well, I did this, so therefore I can do that? I think what you're talking about is something different, which is that you have an idea and they say, well, it's impossible, not because you're going to about it or it's a bad idea, but there's too many things, you can't make money, and you figure out a way to make money. I've worked for people, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of these people, who become very successful and they think that they're going to be successful. Everything they touch is going to turn to gold. And you see them start touching things and everything turns to shit.
Yeah.
And the initial thing falls apart too because of the confidence and the narcissism. That's a different instinct. And do you see that a lot or as much as I do?
Well, you're very intuitive on that one. You're 100% correct. And so what you learn over time around your failures is you're not good at everything, and I'm certainly not good at everything. And the analogy back to the watch insurance, I knew I couldn't build the tech stack to connect a POS from a watch dealer to the Chubb database. I can't do that. So I found the two best guys that have already proven they could do it, Carl and Benji, and I gave them, they're my partners. They own 20% each of the company. Yeah. And so we're all working together. They're way better than I am at that. Yeah. And they were the ones that made it happen. And I was able to go and convince consumers on my social media to try the product, and they liked it. But it's sort of like, I only do partnerships now. I create partnerships of talented people. The Alberta project and the one we're looking at, we got two other ones coming up in other states. There's amazingly talented people that have equity in those deals. And I gave them the equity because, I funded the whole thing myself so far. But without those people, I could never be successful. And so you try and mitigate your risk with great teams, but you also lose sometimes. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't always work out. Mm-hmm. But you need to have the fire. You got to find that fire somewhere. And for me, it's being told I can't do it. That's the only thing that really motivates me, because I remember who said that to me. And then 5 years later, I shove it right up their ass. I mean, I know that sounds crass, but it's like being in a football game. You want to win.
You probably get so much less of that now because you're a famous guy who's on TV and has made a lot of money, and people think, well, he's the guy with the Midas touch. Fewer people are telling you can't do that. Right?
Oh no!
Listen,
there's no such thing as the Midas touch. It's a
or
good
idea. Perception that you have.
Yeah, maybe.
But if he has an idea, he's the guy who knows the good ideas. So don't tell him no.
Yeah, no, I hear that, but that's not how the world works. And it's sort of, it's leadership is convincing others that you know where you're going, and that is, they don't have to like you. I mean, this is the biggest problem people make when they're trying to start a business or be an investor. It's nobody. You don't need people to like you. You need them to respect you. Mm-hmm. That's what matters. And the way you garner respect is achieving and executing success, because they're benefiting from that. Mm-hmm. I mean, in business, you want to reward, getting. If you're successful in a goal, you want to spread the largesse around, and that's how you lead a team. I mean, it's funny because my wife always says to me, "Oh, I was reading your social media today, and all these people are really pissed off at you." And I say, "So what? You don't know these people. There's millions of people pissed off at me every day. The only people I care about is you, my family, my 25 closest friends, and that's it. I don't have to convince anybody else. You don't have to like me. I want you to respect me." And lots of people, I'll tell you something very interesting. I got sent a almost 3-page essay from, I think it came from LinkedIn, maybe it was Instagram, I forget, raging against me, really, really pissed off. And I read the whole thing and I thought, I have to reach out to this person with respect that they took that much time to rage against me. Yeah. Can you imagine wasting your time that way?
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. Yeah. But to me, I had to show respect. And if I want more, I mean, if you're willing to spend all that time being pissed at me, I'm doing something right. That's what I think.
If they responded, and this is true of every person who sent me a nasty email, a very, very nasty email that I've responded to, they always respond with joy and like they
Well,
can't believe that you responded. They're like, thank you. And they're and embarrassment usually. It's usually, oh, I'm sorry, I was a little off the handle on that one. I'm not sure if that person responded to you.
I just say to myself, anybody that's willing to spend that much time
Yeah.
in starting a narrative
Yeah.
deserves respect. And I say that to everybody. You know, I get into these big debates on policy on networks like CNN and stuff, and I get hundreds of thousands of DMs. Like just, you were an asshole last night on blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, this is great. They're in the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
They're debating the policy. You know, it's not, some people go crazy, but I get it.
Setting policy, being able to affect policy, being able to create enormous numbers of jobs and make people wealthy and make people's lives, as you've done to partners, whether it's in the watch insurance business or any of the other ones, people are coming on Shark Tank. Those are all the unbelievable benefits of being a person of stature and a person of wealth, right? All those things sound great to me. What's the worst part about being a rich guy?
Well, it's a great question. And I'll tell you, it's your own family hitting on you for money. And it's extremely difficult, and particularly during the period when you're starting to amass it. And I've done many mistakes in this, and I've found a path to success, and I'm going to give advice to everybody on this thing. You have your big liquidity event the first time. Maybe you made 5 million, maybe you made 10, maybe you made 100 million, whatever it is. Many people in your family will approach you, and they will say, I don't want you to give me money. I want you to invest in my idea. And I want you to give me this for that, or I want to start a bowling alley or a restaurant or a business or whatever it is. And I've seen it all. And your extended family will do the same. Your wife's side, your long lost cousin, you'll get it all. And in the beginning, you will feel the guilt of success, and you will give them money. And you will slowly destroy your relationship with those people. And you will have horrible Thanksgivings. So here's the way you do it. They come to you and say, look, I want to borrow $200,000. And I have an idea, and I think it's really going to work, and I want you to be the first shareholder in it. And my answer is always the same. I say, look, I'm going to give you the $200,000. I don't want to be paid back. It's a gift. But I never, ever want you ever to ask for money from me again, ever. Or when I'm gone, my wife, or my kids. That's the covenant you're going to agree to right now. I just did this a couple of months ago with one of them. And he said, shit, I should have asked for $250. That was his answer. So
For that answer, I'd give him $300. It's a good answer.
But you know, that is the deal.
Yeah.
So now,
people don't feel weird about doing that?
not at all. And they do. And so,
Is
so
that a
I have
failure
done
of
that.
me? Should
I've
I
done
do
that
that?
with many family members, and they can never ask me for money again. I don't want to be paid back. I don't want to talk about money. I want to have Thanksgiving dinner and talk about family, not money. And so I've watched how bad money can screw up a family. And because loans all over the place, you're trying to get back money from your brother-in-law and all that stuff. That's insane. It's a big mistake.
So you just become an ATM to people at a certain point.
Well, you know, it's sort of, there's a point of where I just stop. And it's the same with charities. You have to, my strategy with my wife, we made mistakes in the early days. Pick 5. Stay 5 for 5. Stay with 5 for 5 years. And just focus on those 5. That means something to you. Maybe it's education. Maybe it's a hospital. Maybe it's a dance theater. Maybe it's a combination of the arts. Whatever it is, whatever the 5 that matter to you. You know, we have thyroid issues in my family, so I want to provide for thyroid research. Whatever. But make it focused so you actually know what you're doing as opposed to spraying money around where you have no idea where it goes.
Yeah.
And so that's another strategy. And I think it's, you learn this the hard way. That's what happens. But the worst is seeing families divided by money.
It's happened to you, you said, in the early days.
Yeah. It was a very bad stuff happened where you know, look, I need
like
more.
Long-term stuff that still don't
It
talk
took
to
me
people,
years
or-
to repair, and in some cases, it never got repaired. You know, I got extended family like everybody else. It's just, your relationship will change not to the positive on success, to the negative in some ways, and you have to deal with it. You have to learn how to deal with it. You will see, it will happen to everybody, and in a way, it's just one of the derivatives that's negative about wealth. You asked me what that was, and I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, I always wonder. I have one child, I have a 14-year-old, and what to do with her and giving her money. Because I never had money. I'm an Irish Catholic kid from Boston. We didn't have any money. And nothing. I mean, we went on one vacation, 2 vacations, my entire youth. It's the only thing I remember. And, we could get into Patriots games because my dad worked for the Patriots. Had a company that moved the equipment for the visiting teams into the locker rooms picked it up at TF Green Airport in Providence, and he worked his ass off. But because I didn't have that, I go the other direction with my daughter. And now I'm noticing some of the negative consequences of that.
Yes, you're entitling her, and that's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. You're giving her a reason not to launch. And I learned this the hard way from my mother. I've told this story countless times, but it's still relevant. And it's certainly relevant for you to think about this. When I graduated from college, my mother came to see me and said, I have good news and bad news. And I said, well, give me the bad news first. And she said, the dead bird under the nest never learns how to fly. And I said, what the hell does that mean? She said, it means no more checks. You're graduating. I'm done. I don't have to give you any more money. And I said, well, Mom, I don't have a job and I got to pay car payments. She said, I don't give a damn.
Did she have a little bit of money at that point?
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I learned something after she died that was quite remarkable. She had kept 15% of her salary as a working woman, working for her dad in a company called Kitty's Togs from when she was in her 20s. She worked in the accounting side of the business, and she kept 15% and invested it in 2 asset classes from when she was like 24, telco bonds and the S&P 500. And she never touched the interest or the dividends. And she died a very wealthy, independent woman because she was married twice.
Unbeknownst to you.
To anybody. In those days, women could hide their wealth, and she did. And she was divorced, and then she remarried. But I was the older brother, and when she died, and I met with the executive, he said, you got to come down here. You got to see this. And I said, I don't have to. We're middle-class family. I'm not worried about it. And he said, no, you got to come down here. And I called my brother and I said, you can't believe this. So she didn't believe in entitlement, but she paid for her sisters and my brother and I, and my stepfather, because my original dad died when I was only 7 years old, also helped out. But Georgette was fiercely independent financially because she lived through some very tough times in divorcing my original father. And she wanted her own financial independence, and she always wanted that. But the point was that she hated entitlement. She hated entitlement. And everybody knows a rich, screwed up kid. Everybody knows that. And that's because she believed they never launched it. They didn't have a reason to. And so I remember that long after she passed. And when I had my first liquidity event in Boston, actually, we were in Cambridge, Athenaeum Building. I went over into Boston with my lawyers, and we created a generational skipping trust that I funded that provides for every child, even born out of wedlock, full freight until the last day of education. They go all the way through a PhD. And after that, nothing. And I went back home and I told my 4- and 6-year-old kids at the time what the structure was. Of course, they didn't understand that. But later in life, when my son was really struggling, he asked me, can you tell me about the trust? And I said, sure, you have one, because his friends had trusts in school. And he said to me, look, because he was failing. He was in high school and failing. I said, Trevor, your trust works like this. Mom and I are going out for a movie. It was Wednesday night. We always went to the Chestnut Hill Theater. Yeah, you probably know where that is. Yeah. And he said, well, okay, what does that have to do with anything? I said, well, if we get killed in a bus accident or something, you don't have to worry. You're going to get to finish high school, but after that, it doesn't look like you're going to get into college. He said, yeah, but I got a trust. I don't have to worry about that. I said, oh, no.
Oh, he said that to you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a mistake.
I said, no. It doesn't work if you're not in school. He went, what? I said, yeah, the dead bird under the nest never learns how to fly. He said, what the hell does that mean? And I explained the structure. The horror in his eyes. I mean, that was Georgette speaking from heaven. Because
and that was a provision in the trust. That
the trust it provides, and if there's a medical emergency, it provides. But if you're not in school, you're not. And so, And look what happened to him. He figured it out. He got into university as an electrical engineer. He graduated. He got a job at Tesla. And then one day he called me about a year ago and said, I want to go get my master's of engineering, design, and MBA simultaneously. I said, well, Trev, there's only 2 schools that do that. It's Harvard and MIT, and you're not going to get into either of those. Mm-hmm. He got into both.
And he didn't have to say, Dad, can you please buy a building?
They wouldn't let me even write a letter because I teach there.
Yeah.
So he got some directors at Tesla to sponsor him, and he got into both, and he chose Harvard because there's more girls there. And so he's doing it now, but he tapped the trust. He said, hey, does that trust still work? I said, yeah, it still works. You go back to school, you got it. And so he's now milking the trust again. But that's fair deal. That's what the trust said. And I don't run that trust anyways. It's trustees. Yeah. So it doesn't matter.
But you put money in that trust.
Yeah, it's done well. So the point is it provides, he can go to get a PhD if he wants. And it's basically paying for his living costs and the cost of education. That's a motivating trust. And that's Georgette's idea. That's the structure. I'm telling you. So you got to be very careful how much money. My wife cheats with my daughter. She'll go out and buy her stuff, and I look at these bills that come in on the credit card, and but she just doesn't give a shit.
But it's hard to say no to that. It's your daughter.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying generational wealth. If you're going to pour so much money on them, they don't have to work.
Yeah,
that's a bad outcome.
No, for me, it's mostly that it was always the awkward thing of being, because I grew up in a very rich town with a dad who was in a union and a mom was a secretary, basically. And everybody else was incredibly wealthy. And it was always the kind of keeping up with the Joneses things of feeling.
But you must have met some very screwed up people.
Everyone I knew was incredibly screwed up. And now that's my worry about my daughter who goes to a good private school in the city. Yeah. And that's my thought. I'm like, oh, everyone has everything. And I want to make sure you don't feel like I did, being so outside of that internal culture because you didn't have the cash for it kind of thing. Your parents didn't have the cash for it.
I'm just telling you, unearned wealth is a curse.
Yeah.
And that's why within 3 generations, they've lost it all. They just piss it away because they don't appreciate how hard it is to make. Yeah. It's, I cry like a baby when I lose money because I know I made it. It was very hard to make it. And I lose money all the time in investments. And it's just really
What's
hard.
The level to make you cry? How much do you have to lose for that?
I cry as much for 10,000 as I do for 10 million. I don't care. It just breaks my heart. It's just I made a mistake and I paid for it, and I made that.
What are you mad at though? You mad at yourself for following a bad instinct or trusting bad research?
I'm getting way better at listening to my gut. That's called experience. And I'll tell you another story that's very effective because I learned it the hard way. In my graduating MBA class, in the last weeks, they kept bringing in these guys to talk to the class as they were launching. And it was great. There were CEOs and stuff in different sectors. You got an idea, and they were just talked to about the careers in these different sectors, all 11 sectors. This one guy walks in, and he, I'll never forget it. That amphitheater case study, Harvard, you're up in these rows,
mm-hmm.
and you've been there for 2 years, mm-hmm. and the guy's down at the pit in the bottom. And there's 2 sets of staircases up and down. So he comes in, he looks at everybody, he doesn't even speak for like a minute. It's very uncomfortable. And it seemed like, and then another 30 seconds, like 90 seconds, he's just looking around. And it got really weird in there. And finally he says, oh, you think you're so smart. The MBAs, you're going to go out in the world and change it. You've got an MBA. And then he said, a third of you are going to become consultants and fail at that. Another third are going to become consultants and be successful and lead a life of mediocrity, which is where I got that whole thing from. And a third of you think you can be entrepreneurs and are going to live life like hell for 15 years to see if you can do it. And half of you will fail. There's going to be a lot of failure in this room, and you're going to learn from it. And I'm Barry Nicole, who's passed away, bless his soul, was beside me for 2 years. And I leaned over and I said to Barry, this guy's such an asshole.
Yeah, there you go. Full circle to the asshole.
That's me today. That's what I say to the glasses.
Yeah.
I say the same thing.
Full circle with the asshole. I mean, on that, those 15 years, so that 1/3, and you broke it down like that before, the third of those people that go to be entrepreneurs, if the people out there watching this or listening to this think that they are in that 1/3 and they have the great idea, you see these people shuffle before you on Shark Tank all the time. What are they giving up in the sense that, what did you give up? I mean, I did a TV show for a number of years when my daughter was very young and I was on the road all the time and I gave up a lot,
Yeah.
It sucked, really sucked. And I feel bad about that every day. I think everything's fine. I think she's doing great. But in order to do that for my own narcissism and for my own desire to be on camera and to be on this TV show, I was just gone for so long. I mean, you're giving up things for that. What did you give up? Is it a family thing? Are you separate? I mean, the signal and the noise, the noise in that sense is your family, right? Being there that is keeping you away from your business, keeping you away from making money and doing the things that you love and that you were absolutely built to do. But those sacrifices are pretty big.
Yeah, you were absolutely right on that. That's a very, very good observation. And I tell every entrepreneur that the sacrifice is brutal. There's no such thing as a balanced life.
No.
That's just ridiculous. You're going to work 25 hours a day, 8 days a week, because you're competing with some guy in Mumbai or Shanghai or whatever it is. I like to tell answer these questions with stories that actually happened. I was teaching a night class from 6 to 9 to engineers, graduating engineers, about entrepreneurship. And this one guy was not participating. You notice in a class, this is a big cohort. I think it was like 150 people. And he never said anything for the whole 3 hours. And, that's bad. That's bad. And, you have the nameplate in front. Mm-hmm. I noticed him. And finally, like 5 minutes before the class is over, it's like 5 to 9, he puts up his hand and said, "Listen, Mr. O'Leary." I said, "Oh, he's now going to participate at the end of the thing." I said, "How come you haven't said anything?" "Well, I'm really troubled. I'm distraught." My fiance came to me this morning and said, she's considering leaving me. And I said, "Well," the whole class, you could hear a pin drop now because you got a little drama here. He says, here's my problem. I've been running a cloud-based product for hedge funds that have less than $250 million, a compliance platform. It's a subscription service. I'm still in the dorm here, and I'm running it out of there, and my run rate's $5 million at a 70% gross margin. I'm saying, what? Like, that's a phenomenal SaaS business. Mm-hmm. And you've got it to 5 million and you're still finishing your engineering degree, and everybody's looking up at this guy. And he says, "Yeah, but I only sleep 5 hours a night, and I have no time on weekends to go to my fiance's family picnics and soccer games with, the family and stuff." And she finally said that I have to choose. I need your advice.
Oh, dear.
I'll never forget this one. And I just was thinking on my feet, and I said, okay, which one is harder to replace, your business or your fiance? Because that's the decision you're going to have to make. She's the wrong person for you. If she doesn't understand your journey as an entrepreneur, you're going to get divorced anyways. And boy, that caused a shit show. That class was probably 50-50 men and women. We didn't leave until almost 10 o'clock debating that one. But I'm right. He never married her. I checked up on him. It was the wrong decision because entrepreneurship's in the blood, and had he proven his first concept was going to work. And she didn't get it. That's a bad marriage right there. Mm-hmm. So you got to make some very tough decisions in life about who you partner with, because marriage is a business. I don't care what anybody says. The reason you get married is to provide a financial stabilization for a family.
I have one failed business. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, it's kind of, listen, I got separated for 2 years when I let celebrity get to my head, and I figured it out pretty damn fast. I want to get back to my family, and I've never screwed around since.
Wait, your wife said that to you specifically? This is getting to your head. You're becoming a different person.
No, she kicked me out.
But for that reason?
No, I was, you don't understand the effects of celebrity until because I was not ready for what happened to me, in year 5 of Shark Tank. That was nuts what happened. And, I just wasn't used to it. And I obviously let it get to my head, and it was bad. And so, I got kicked out of my house and I lived by myself for 2 years, and I had a crazy, crazy, crazy time. I mean, I'm not saying I'm glad I did it, but, it really made me appreciate what family.
Does she know about the crazy time that you had?
Yes.
Okay.
And she also got, met up with somebody else. And so we were
really?
living separate lives, and we weren't divorced yet, but we were going through the process. And our daughter intervened and said, "What are you assholes doing?
Yeah.
You're destroying our family." So we got back together, and it was actually a better union after that. And I'm very proud that our family is back together, because it's very tough
It's
times.
rare that happens, but I mean, I imagine that in those 2 years, you're like, I mean, to be totally frank, you're like, this is pretty fucking great. I'm successful. People know who I am. I get whatever I want. I mean, this is not a bad 2 years.
I lived every bachelor's dream times 10. I had a villa in the south of France. I had a yacht. I had all that stuff. It was crazy, but it was hollow and shallow.
Yeah. You need a little hollow sometimes.
Yeah. But I'm just saying.
Once in a while.
I'm glad I didn't stay down that path, because the motivations of the people around you aren't necessarily true. I mean,
so this is also one of the bad things about being a rich guy. That moment.
I think it would be very, very hard to. It would be, and I don't want to go there. And I'm very happy I'm back, and I'm very, very focused on my family now. But that lesson was, you have to experience it to realize how shallow it is.
Yeah.
And it sounds like fun, and it is.
Yeah.
But it's also shallow, and there's not a lot of great stuff that comes out of it. But, I did some crazy stuff. I mean, unbelievably crazy stuff. And I think back on it, I think, wow, did I really do that? The answer is yes. But I don't want to go back there, and I'm very, very happy.
You can't. I'm so mad at you for saying that and not telling me one of the great crazy things that you did, because
I just can't do that. It wouldn't be useful to anybody. But
I mean, for me, it's aspirational for me. Ken.
No,
I want to have that 2-year period. I'm gonna need to get rich first, but then when that happens, I'm gonna have my 2-year period.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come to you, and I want that MIT class where I say, how do I fuck it up for 2 years? Tell me what to do. Because that sounds like fun.
That's funny. But, I feel, having done that, I help a lot of my friends going through their marriage failures. I give a lot of marriage advice now, having learned.
No, I see it online. I see it's like, O'Leary's talking about marriage.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's a financial thing, but it's both financial and just kind of broadly emotional advice.
I just went to a friend's 4th wedding. I've been to all of his weddings. And I finally said to him, "It's not them, it's you."
Yeah.
Like,
he didn't get that at this point.
I said, "Why are you doing this? You have children from multiple marriages. You don't need to get married again." And he said, "I love the cheating."
Wow.
I said, "That's fucking sick." Like, that's...
You kind of have to admire that, though. Getting married.
I've never heard an answer like that, but that's what he said. And
I
said,
it's like trying to go to jail so you can break out. That's incredible.
It's insane motivation.
Wow.
And this guy is a wonderful guy, and I'm not going to mention his name, but I've been to so many of his weddings, and they're phenomenal weddings. I mean,
well, it's a fun wedding, and the cheating's fun. So let's give him some credit.
I think the actual answer is, I miss the cheating. That's what it was.
I miss the cheating.
I miss the cheating. Yeah, that's what he said. It's insane. That's fine.
I mean, I respect it, and I'm impressed by it. That's all I'm going to say.
But that really tells you. I mean, anyways, even 2 marriages and 3 are complicated. It's so complicated.
Yeah.
But most of my friends are divorced. Most of them.
Yeah.
The majority, 66%.
You've never been divorced.
I have never been divorced.
So it's one woman. Your
I've
current wife
been with the
wife
same woman
is the
now.
mother of your
We were
children.
separated for 2 years, but well over 30 years. And we started dating. We lived together. That's the other thing I learned. Don't move in unless you get married. You have no reason to stay together. The first problem you have, you just split up again. It's stupid.
I really hope my girlfriend doesn't watch this.
You know,
The best thing is that she doesn't watch anything that I do, so I think this is going to be
well,
okay.
look, everybody has their own strategy, but when I give advice on matters of love, I'm kind of tying it to what works long term, because if most marriages break up on financial stress. One outspends the other. They start facing some tremendously tough decisions about finance. and then it breaks up. And divorce basically erases a third of your wealth by the time you finish with the lawyers and capital gains and the government. It's a bad strategy. I actually tell people that are after 50, do a shadow divorce. Just separate, stay married, keep your assets. It's a much better strategy.
Yeah.
And so that way you're not destroying your family's. You worked hard for your money. Why do you want to give it away again?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, here's one. My marriage thing is that you just don't marry a Swede, which is why somebody from Sweden.
Yeah.
Don't marry like an Italian. They're a little more vengeful. Kevin O'Leary, you're a great credit to the Irish people, to the Irish American people, and we really appreciate you.
I have to give some credit to the Lebanese side too. I'm half Irish, half Lebanese.
Oh wow!
Yeah, my mother's
That's a rare
Lebanese, and
combo.
so I think it's a black Irish combo. Yeah,
It's a black Irish combo.
yeah, but it helps me in the Middle East.
Yes.
So
yes.
it's.
Inshallah, he will get through the Middle
Exactly.
East.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it. It was very interesting. Thanks.
Was that a good interesting or a bad interesting?
No, I some people
I
that
worry
do
about
this.
that. It was an interesting.
Some people that attempt to do this aren't good at it because I've spent time with them too. But this was very easy and enjoyable, and I think we explored a lot of different topics. That's great.
Great, I appreciate it. That was the right ending.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
That's good.
We know of new methods of attack. The Trojan horse, the fifth column.